Hey, what's going on guys? Jimmy here with One Road. So in my last video, I replaced the fuel filter on this 2003 Chevrolet Suburban, but I did that just kind of as a preamble to what I'm about to do, which is replace the gaskets on the upper intake manifold, as well as the knock sensors. See, my truck's not starting, and I don't know why. I'm assuming because I have been hearing a vacuum sound in the cab and under the hood for a few months now. I got a check engine light of P0101. I already replaced the mass airflow sensor with a brand new unit, and it still won't start. Because of that code and because of the fact that I was hearing vacuum leak inside the cab and under the hood, as well as every bit of research I've done on YouTube, it's leading me to believe that maybe there's too much air getting in the upper intake manifold. It's due to the crappy gaskets that were put on from the factory. And so Fel-Pro has this new gasket set that is a lot more robust. And I know that because of that research that this is a major problem with these 5.3 liter vehicles. So I know I have a semi-decent job before me. I'm gonna do my best to film it and to get really nice shots for you. Go ahead and follow along if you want, and let's get started. All right, so a couple things. I picked up this quick disconnect set here off of Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description below. I watched another guy's video and he recommended these, and I have to say, just using actually the 3/8, the blue one here, to change the fuel filter was, I mean, I could not have done it without that. So I'm very glad I picked these up, and I know that I'll need them again on the fuel lines on the upper intake manifold. I did also pick up ACDelco original equipment knock sensors, which I'll also be replacing. I also picked up the wiring harness for both knock sensors, brand new wiring harness because everyone recommended it. And also one modification you have to make that the factory actually suggests you do, basically seal the top of these things once you seat them in, and the reason why is so that water doesn't get down and corrode these, which actually ground to the motor. There's only one wire coming out of the top of these, and that's because the ground is actually through this unit. A lot of people have issues with these because they actually corrode and rust so bad that there is no more ground. Another tool I picked up is this set of 90-degree needle nose pliers, and this was recommended by one guy who basically said these are great because this entire face here produces equal pressure when you bite down on, say, a hose or something that you're going to pull off. This brand, Tecton, is on Amazon, and they were not expensive whatsoever, and they have a forever warranty, so I'll put a link down in the description below for these too. Well, I gotta say, this job looks pretty daunting, but I think that it's kind of not that bad. This whole plastic piece is the upper intake manifold. I already have my Vortec cover taken off, of course. In order to take this off, all you have to do is remove, there's one bolt down there, there's another there, and there's two more down there. So there's 4 bolts on each side. The trick is you got to get all these wires and all these things out of the way, including the throttle body. I have to figure out whether I want to take this off or leave it on. And the only reason why is because there's an actual coolant line going to the bottom of that throttle body. So I'm either going to take that coolant line off, which seems the easier part to me, or take the whole throttle body off. I'm not sure. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and remove this intake ductwork here. All right. With that out of the way, it kind of makes it look a little less daunting. I can actually see what I'm doing, and what I'm going to do now is take a bunch of pictures of the motor, and that way I can know exactly where everything goes when I go to put this thing back together. Okay, so at this point, I have unplugged a bunch of things. I have unplugged hoses, all the fuel injector connectors, a bunch of wiring harness stuff that basically came off and made this whole section loose over here. There's some plugs you can see back there that are just loose. It should be all pretty self-explanatory in terms of where they go and how they fit back together. You can see a couple more plugs here that came out of the alternator, and also just up here into this vacuum line. It looks like a lot of stuff, but it's really not. This maybe took me 10 minutes to get all this stuff unplugged, and I think I'm ready to go, other than the fuel lines that I have to take apart and this vacuum hose, and that's it. Okay, you can see the fuel lines are removed. Back here, very easy to do. Again, I used this blue 3/8 inch quick disconnect tool. Extremely easy. You need these to do this. There's two fuel lines, the supply and the return. The supply is obviously thicker than the return. This hose, this vacuum hose here, I just disconnected from here, and I'll just route it back through when I put it back together, because that clamp is gonna be a lot harder to get to. At this point, I think every single thing I need to take off is off. Oh, except for, actually, I'm sorry. I need to take off these coolant lines going to the throttle body. All right, guys, I already took the other sets of bolts off. You can see that one that's kind of sticking out right there. So I'm gonna work on this side, and actually there's 5 bolts. I thought there was 4, but there's 5, but they're no big deal. Just got my long extension on there, and you just loosen them up and get all 5 of them. I think I forgot to mention that I did get those coolant lines off. You can see I actually left them on the throttle body. I'm sorry, this side I left on the throttle body. This side I took off because it's a long hose that's hanging out over here. I just didn't want to deal with taking the throttle body off and trying to line it back up with the gasket and everything, so I decided to just take those 2 lines off. There's no coolant or anything that came out. All right, so let's try and lift up this intake manifold. Oh, very easy. You can see that sucker's lifting right up, so I'm gonna get this thing up and out of here. All right, here we go. Still got the fuel rails on. And let's see, I just wanna get a good grip on this without blocking the shot too much. And we're coming up. Make sure we're not hung up on anything. What am I getting hung up on here? There's fuel dumping out of the fuel lines, so maybe you might want to, oh, there we go, that's what we're getting hung up on. Okay, this. I now have the upper intake off, and you can see all of the intake ports in the heads. You can also see the knock sensors, which look like they're in extremely good shape. I don't think there's a problem with those whatsoever, but I'm gonna replace them anyway. You know, I'm already down here, I'm already in this area, I've already got everything apart. Why not replace them? I have OEM parts. So I'm gonna replace them, and I'm gonna do the sealant, the silicone seal on top of these seals here. And in terms of looking for the problem, the only thing I see that's jumping out to me is that port right there, right back here on the back side of it. It seems that that may have been a problem. It just doesn't seem as uniform, I guess is the right word, as all the other ones do. And there's a little more grease there on this side. I don't know. I was hoping to see some major issue, but to be honest, guys, I don't see a big major issue, although I'm not a professional, so I don't really know what I'm looking for. If you guys see something that looks crazy, let me know, comment below. I'm still gonna change all this stuff out just so I never ever have to deal with it again. Here's the other side. Tell me what you guys think. You know what the weirdest thing is? There's like cooked sunflower seeds down there. I don't know how those things got there or what that's all about, but wow, how weird. I just vacuumed this whole area out with my shop vac just to get all the chunks and all the seeds and who knows what. I just wanted to point something out though. I saw one guy's video where he was describing how he had a tough time taking the knock sensor plugs off the top, and they were very easy. And the reason why they were easy is because I used these 90-degree needle nose, and all I did was I spread them wide open and I grabbed on to the sides here. Obviously this is backwards, but you can see those sides have actual little pads on them, and that's where you're supposed to squeeze them so the thing just pops right off. And it was very simple. Just squeezed it, pulled straight up, not very much pressure at all, and it just came off. One other thing to note is I was taking a look at the back of this thing, and as I tilted it up on its face, like so, a big pool of motor oil came out. It was basically brown motor oil. Looked like, you know, somewhat used, and it just probably, I want to say 4 ounces of motor oil just poured right out of there. I wiped it up, it was oily, and I smelled it. It smelled like oil. So I don't know if that's some sort of vacuum sucking up oil right back in there. I don't know where it would be sitting or pooling, but that definitely, I don't think that's should be like that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm looking at these gaskets back here, and this one right here was the one that I thought could be the culprit. I'm not sure. By the bolt there, it looks like it could have been leaking, but I'm glad I got new gaskets and I'm doing this job so that I never have to worry about it again, and these things should be good to go after that. So there's the oil. Don't know where that's coming from. I mean, I do know where it's coming from. It's coming from the throttle body, but where would that be pooling? And is that normal? Comment below and let me know. It is oil, definitely. Alright guys, so at this point I have cleaned off the mating surface where the gasket will go. I just used a rag and a razor blade. I did try and I thought to use some steel wool, but the moment I even touched it down, I saw a bunch of little flakes kind of going into the valley here, so I didn't want to do that. I took my vacuum and vacuumed out every single port with my with a nozzle going all the way down in there to just get everything that could have possibly fallen in there, even though I was being extremely careful. I just didn't want any crud to fall in there and accidentally get you know, seated in the valve surface. So I have done everything with a microfiber and this razor blade, and I would like do one really good swipe, making sure nothing would fall in, and then I would shake it out over here, do another good swipe, and just, I mean, I took my time with it. I really didn't want anything to fall into each port there, and I didn't have shop rags to shove into each port to protect them. So unfortunately, that's kind of why you need shop rags, huh? But everything looks good. The mating surfaces are nice and smooth. The razor blade got everything off, and I think I'm going to be ready to start pulling out these knock sensors. To pull out the knock sensors, I'm using a 22 millimeter, and I don't know how hard these things are going to be to get out. I'm not sure if I could do it one-handed. I definitely don't want to break anything. That looks like it busted loose. Okay, so let's see if I can spin it by hand and get this sucker out of there. Oh yeah. Wow, that thing looks brand new. And I just want to remind you guys, for those of you not following my channel, you can subscribe and know more about the story of my vehicles, but this truck, it only has 77,000 miles, I believe, and I bought it from the original owner. So this thing is a very lightly driven truck. It's an 03, so you know, it's not bad at all. Okay, so here we have the new harness for the knock sensors. This is by Dorman. It looks exactly the same as the OEM part. I don't think there's going to be any problems with this. Speaking of the OEM part, I'm glad I'm replacing this because that wire looks pretty burnt there. Nothing really wrong inside, but the wire looks burnt there. And also on this other one, it looks pretty fried. New harness and plugs are installed. These plugs are really, really tight, hard to get in. The last thing I'm gonna do before I start assembling the rest of it is I'm gonna put a bead of the red RTV around these because that's what the manufacturer calls for when you replace these. Here's the new gasket from Fel-Pro. There are two different versions. There's the plastic one that I think is basically like the stock one that clips onto the plastic intake manifold. And then there's these metal framed ones, and these ones are supposed to be the superior, you know, built like a tank, never have to do this again gasket. These are about double the price. But I would say it's well worth it because if they do really work that much better and give that much more, you know, support with the thicker rubber there, I think it's well worth it to never have to worry about doing this again. Not sure if you can tell, but one thing I am doing is rubbing a little of Super Lube grease just on the mating surfaces of that rubber, just so nothing binds up and everything will just slide right into place pretty easily. Also, I want to show you down here on this bolt. That's the location bolt for the gasket. You can see there's a tab that's bent down and it goes around the bolt on both sides, and you're going to want to make sure you push it all the way down. I actually heard a little snap like a good click, clicking it into place as I pushed it down. So I'm not sure if you'll hear that, but I did, and it is definitely seated. I can tell with the actual surfaces of everything that it is correctly in there. Alright guys, well here's the original gaskets. You can see just how little material there was to seal, and it's all smashed up, and they use these little clips to clip onto the manifold itself. Okay, so here is the manifold, the bottom. You can see the bolts there, and you can also see the injectors, which are right there, the little orangish yellow ring. That's an injector. That's an injector. 4 injectors on each side, V8 of course. I'm gonna go ahead and take a rag and clean off this mating surface. I've been connecting a few of the connections, just really looking everything over, making sure that everything is attached and where it should be. I haven't forgotten anything back there. Of course, I still need to put the fuel lines on. I already did the hose here, the vacuum hose for the brake booster, and I obviously have to do all the injectors. But the step that I'm going to take now is I'm going to use my Harbor Freight 1/4 inch torque wrench, and I'm going to torque down these bolts for the intake. And basically you start in the center. From what I have researched on YouTube, you start in the center here and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. You just kind of go in a star pattern, you know, crisscross. The first pass, you're going to make 2 passes. The first pass is going to be 44 inch-pounds. That's not foot-pounds, but inch-pounds. And the second pass is going to be 89 inch-pounds. I found 2 different videos in which the people said the same thing. I'm not sure if one of them got the information from the other, but that's usually what I'll do, is I'll go to YouTube and look for multiple people to say the same numbers, and then that's the way I know, hey, that's probably correct. I think that's what I'm going to go with. I might do some Googling and see if I can find it in one more location with those same numbers. But we're looking good. Everything is coming along just fine. I am taking my time and making sure that I know what I'm doing, and everything is being put back together exactly as it should. So it's definitely taking me longer than it would take someone who's just, you know, doing this really quick. I'm actually taking the time to learn. I'm looking at everything, learning, and figuring out what exactly I am doing. Got my torque wrench set at 44 inch-pounds, and I'm going to make the first pass. So starting on the middle bolt, because there is 5 on each side, so there is a middle. I'm going to go ahead and crank this down. They're not really tight, so that's why you see me tightening this pretty good. Starting to feel tight. Okay, that was it. I got every single thing back together. The fuel lines, the coolant lines, the injectors, everything. And now is the moment of truth, when I'm going to try to start this thing up and hope that it does start, and that if it does start, I'm assuming that was the problem. Pardon my lack of enthusiasm. It is probably close to midnight right now for me, and I've just kind of been working on this very, very slowly. I had some friends come and were talking to me for a little bit, so it's kind of taken me the better part of, you know, the last part of the day to get this done, but I'm happy. And here's the thing, I know that those gaskets don't look good. I know that those gaskets are a problem for these 5.3 liter motors. I know the knock sensors are a problem for these 5.3 liter motors. I'm glad that they're done regardless of whether this thing starts up or not. I'm glad that I'll never have to think about that again. I was hearing a vacuum leak in the cab, and so I'm very curious, regardless of whether this is the problem or not, if that vacuum leak that I heard is now fixed because of these. If that's the case, then it was worth it all right there. But otherwise, if it doesn't start, I'm going to assume that I may have a fuel issue, and you know, that basically means like the fuel pump might be bad. So I'll look into how to fix that. I know you'd have to, you know, drop the tank and all that stuff, but I'm just curious if that's something I want to get into, or if I just want to take it in and have that done. I just hate messing with fuel and that smell and everything. So this was bad enough, replacing the fuel filter and doing all this, messing with the fuel lines. But I had a fan going the whole time, which you can see behind me, sucking in outside air and pushing it through the garage out. So I wasn't breathing the fumes that much. And yeah, so we're ready to start this thing. So let's see how it goes. Please, Lord God, let it start. We're in park. I'm gonna turn it on, key off a few times. See, I can hear the fuel pump run, unless that's not the fuel pump. I feel like I can hear it run. I do hear something run for, you know, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Please. Not starting, guys. Okay. All right, back to the drawing board. Got to figure it out. This is what it's all about, though, guys. You know, garage mechanic. You just burn the midnight oil and try to figure it out. This is how you learn. This is how I'm learning. And that is disappointing. Man. Okay. If you guys have any suggestions for me, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.